Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tina, and I am the Capability Building Coordinator for Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Connecting Up is a part of the Info Exchange Group. Info Exchange is a not-for-profit social enterprise that has delivered technology for social justice for over 25 years. With over 100 staff across Australia and New Zealand, we tackle the biggest social challenges through the smart and creative use of technology. I'd like to welcome you all to the webinar, Creating Compelling Videos for Your Not-for-Profit, which will be presented by Rich Thompson and Brendan Ridley from Cadence Media. We'll start with a little bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted, so if you have any technical issues, please type it into the questions box on your webinar panel and I'll be able to assist you through there. If you have any questions during the session, please also type it into the questions box and Rich and Brendan will answer them in the Q&A section at the end of the webinar. Please note that your comments and questions will not appear to the entire group. If you are on a Wi-Fi connection and have multiple programs open, this can sometimes affect the quality of the audio and video of the webinar. If possible, please close all other programs to help you have the best experience. Please note that the webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording and the slides will be sent to you shortly after the webinar ends. Before we start, also, I'd like to remind you that there will be a short survey at the end of the webinar. We'd appreciate it if you took a few minutes to provide us with some feedback. That's all from me for now. I'll hand it over to Rich and Brendan to get things started. Thanks, guys.
Hi guys, how are you? This is a very strange way to have a conversation, us talking at you. My name is Rich Thompson and this is Brendan Ridley.
Hey guys.
I'm the creative director of Cadence Media and Brendan is our director of photography. And today we're very keen to talk about video and not-for-profits. We are a, let me just jump back to this. We are an agency that is concerned with social good. So we work with lots of not-for-profit organisations. We do work with commercial organisations as well on their kind of community-based projects. We love working with not-for-profits because we want to see a better world and we love partnering with people on that. And one of the things that we're particularly keen on doing is enabling and equipping not-for-profits to be able to do good storytelling. So we as an agency, we handle video and design and web and all that sort of stuff. But we're very passionate about video, and we're particularly passionate about what we're going to talk about today, and that is essentially handing you the keys to be able to do video well yourself. There's a place for an agency for big projects, but you certainly don't want to be dependent on one for your video projects. And so it's good to be able to know how to do it yourself, so that you can fill up your communications strategy and calendar with good video. So let's just talk about what we're going to cover today. So we're going to do a very quick, broad look at why use video. Then we're going to go into the storyboarding kind of techniques that we apply and believe are critical. We're going to have a very quick look at interviewing people and how do you get the best out of your interviews. And then we're going to go through super practical tips on how do you get audio, what you should be thinking about when you're doing audio, what you should be thinking about when you're recording video and your framing and all that sort of stuff. And then we'll be looking at lighting as well. And then finally, we'll just talk about some final considerations. There is really an enormous amount of stuff here. So we're going to move quickly through this. And if you do have any questions, and if we can't get to them today, we'll get to them after this. But if you do have questions, please write them down.
Yeah.
Okay, so why use video? Let me just turn this video off. Why use video? So again, I'm very passionate about this, regardless of your production value. So regardless of how fancy your video is, a video is changing the way we process information and it's changing the way we connect with our customers. So even you would know this, even Twitter video or selfie style video, someone sitting in a car and talking about their experience at a supermarket is an extremely powerful mode of communication. So there's a couple of stats here, and all you have to do is look at you do a quick Google search on the latest stats around video marketing, and you'll see that it is the powerful tool. So here's a couple that I think are amazing. So social video generates 12 times more shares than text and images combined. Now, that's an interesting stat because often we spend a lot of time curating images and a lot of time curating what's the perfect kind of text here, what copy should I write that would really engage people, when video, which can be actually much faster to do, is a more powerful and more engaging medium. So it works. So there's a ton of stats around this, but this one I really like. 51% of marketing professionals name video as the type of content with the best ROI. So it's worth your investment in. The reason we love it so much, particularly when it comes to not-for-profits, because not-for-profits, we live or die on our storytelling. And really, video is the best way to engage the breadth of emotions. Video is a way you can help people feel the weight of your organization or the weight of your cause. You can get them to cry with you. You have at your disposal a ton of tools like lighting and music and your story to essentially get people to engage emotionally with you. I think personally it's second only to a face-to-face conversation. So when we have a face-to-face conversation, we're picking up on each other's emotions, and we're able to engage in a live conversation. That is the best way, I think, to tell someone about your organization. I think second to that, it's video. Okay, so we're going to talk about storyboards for a second. The reason we're going to start here is because we believe that story trumps all. So you might have and we've seen this a ton of times, you might have the most amazing production value, you might have a huge 20-person crew, but if your story is not there, you've wasted all your time and you've wasted all your money. And conversely, you might have nothing but an iPhone, but your story might be extremely compelling and it could go viral. So your story trumps your production every time. So spend your time here. We as an agency have what we call the succeed continuum that we go through. So this applies to all our projects that we do. We make sure it's kind of on a scale of 0 to 10. How simple is it? How unexpected is it? How concrete is it? How credible is it? And how emotional is it? This we've adapted from a book called Made to Stick, which is an incredible book. And the guys that wrote this essentially analyzed a bunch of the most successful campaigns and they came across this sort of like, okay, these are the things that they have in common. And I only bring this up because I think this first two especially are extremely powerful when it comes to video. So you have to make sure your video is simple. You've got a very simple story or a very simple message that you're trying to convey. With not-for-profits, we often fall into the trap, not-for-profits fall into the trap of trying to cover so much information in one go. It's what we call the curse of knowledge, where you think, I must include this, and this won't make sense if I don't include this, etc., etc. And you end up bloating your story out, and it becomes quite a complex thing for people to understand. So we always say, spend your time getting to the very core, the very nugget. What are you trying to say? What's that simple thing? And then make sure it's in some way unexpected, because if not, it will just get lost in the world of media out there. So when it comes to storyboards, look, there is no real rule on what a storyboard should look like or what it should include. Remember, the storyboard is there to serve you. You're not there to serve the storyboard. So it might be something like, on the left here, you've got, just the scene description, and then it might be just a visual description of it. And you might have a third column that says, what's the audio happening here? Or it might be on the right where you put like, you just find images that you think, yeah, this is the kind of thing that we want to capture. It could be that you sketch it. It could really be whatever you want. We often see people kind of stall on this storyboard phase because it is overwhelming for them. But the storyboard really is there to serve you and not the other way around. So that's the storyboarding phase. Like we said, spend your time here, spend your time thinking it through. And if you do engage an agency, make sure that the storyboard that you get in is what you would love to see come to fruition. Where possible, get reference videos from them. So, you know, like it's this kind of story, it's this kind of emotion. Get them to find videos that kind of match up with what you're or what they think it could look like. And even if you don't have an agency, that is a really good thing for you to do yourself. You know, I love this video, I love this campaign, I love how they tell their story, I love the kind of emotion in it. Now remember, with any good story in general, there will need to be some sort of arc to it, some sort of journey that you're taking people on. This completely depends on the mode and the delivery that you're going to use for your video. So if it's a social media video, then your story arc needs to be very quick, typically. So, you know, if it's 20 seconds, then the story arc usually on social media is like, what's my first frame going to be that's going to absolutely grab attention and draw people in so that they watch the next 5 seconds, and then what am I going to do in that next 5 seconds that makes them finish the video out? So you need to think of your story arc in that. It's usually something unexpected at the beginning and then tails to your call to action at the end. If, however, you're creating something, maybe it's a cinema ad, let's say, or it's a video for an event. In that situation, you've got a captive audience, and they're the best. They're not going anywhere, so you can take time to develop a story arc. You can build emotion in at the beginning. You can sort of slow it down. You might have a bit long. You might have a minute and a half. You might have 2 minutes. And similarly, if you're going for a documentary, which are making a comeback in a very big way at the moment, mini documentaries, then you can think about your story arc in a different way. But there must always be some sort of intrigue or some sort of problem that is asking the viewer, or that the viewer is asking to be solved or to be revealed. So that's very important when it comes to storyboards. Okay, so once you've got your storyboards, then we go into production, right? And a lot of the time we're talking about interviews. So we're talking about so it might be, your story might be, look, my not-for-profit, we've just heard this story about someone who's had their life transformed by our services. Okay, well, let's get their story quickly on video. So you're going to go over to their house, or maybe you're going to get them to come into your office, and they're going to speak to you. So you need to interview them. Now, to get good material out of them, it's really important that you get a good interview. So you might have heard their story and you're like, wow, that's amazing. But it can all come undone when you sit down with them and there's a camera rolling and they clam up, or they, you know, freak out a little bit and they get all guarded. You lose all that kind of beautiful candidness to the story that you really liked. So here's just a couple of tips, I guess, that we've learned the hard way over time. The first one is that really comfortable is absolutely key. You must make sure you spend time in their comfort zone. So people aren't used to speaking in front of a camera, especially a camera that's not their own. So when the power's out of their own hands, so they might be used to, say, doing a selfie video or something like that. But when the power is out of their hands and someone else is recording it, there's all these questions running on in the back of their mind. So the questions are like, what if I look like an idiot? What if my hair is out of place right now? What if I say the wrong thing? What are they going to do with this video? What if that edit is not right? It's not true to my story. You know, I've heard horror stories of this happening, etc., etc. So you want to essentially spend time before you hit record, really getting them in a comfortable place. Chat with them, talk to them about their story, let them know what it meant to you as a story. So, you know, I heard this, or I love the way you described this the other day. It was incredible. And like I've written here, remind them that their story is important. So remind them why you're doing this. So when you're dealing with gear, this can often be the thing that kind of gets thrown out the window, because you're thinking about your lighting, you're thinking about, oh, okay, have I collected audio right? You're thinking about yourself as well. What kind of questions am I going to ask them? All that sort of stuff. But remember that unless they feel comfortable, all that other stuff doesn't really mean anything. So spend time on them, make them the hero, and let them know how thankful you are for it. One of the things I always do is we make sure the camera's already all set up and ready to go. And then I'll sit down and run through a little thing with them. And I'll say, hey, look, the camera's running, but really this is just a conversation between you and I. So the quicker that you can forget about the camera, the better. I let them know, hey, we're not going to post anything before you see it. So that kind of takes that fear out of them, you know, and you'll be able to speak into the edit afterwards. So if you don't like something or other, we always take a photo of the, or like show them how they're going to look. So we always say, hey, this is the frame that we've set up right now. They like it, they can check their hair, check their shirt and things like that. It's just essentially one by one putting their fears at ease before you get going. I always tell them, hey, we're recording digital. Doesn't matter if you talk yourself into a corner, it's extremely normal. You just start again, it's okay. Take your time, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
I think an important point with this one as well is to actually not be afraid, I suppose, to tell them, you know, if they've stumbled over a line, or maybe if their hair is out of place or something. I think it's more than okay to actually tell them this. And I think when you do that, and while it might feel, I suppose, a little bit uncomfortable for you to say that, it actually helps them to have confidence in you that you're making them look their best and sound their best and come across in a way that they'll be happy with in the end product as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so the second thing here is to ask open-ended questions. I'm sure you already know this, but I'll just reiterate it. We avoid questions like did and when did this happen, because I'll give you a very quick answer typically. Oh, it happened last week, and then that's the end. Whereas you want to do more open-ended. So how did it feel? Or tell me about the time when this happened. And then they're essentially forming and creating sentences around that open-ended question as opposed to answering a direct question. We always ask them, for the cleanness of the edit, to repeat the question back to us. So if we might say, what does it mean to you to be a part of this organization? We would ask them to say, when I think about being part of this organization, I feel this, as opposed to jumping into, oh, I love it, or something like that. Because without that frame of reference at the beginning, it makes the edit very hard, and then you need to kind of rely on titles and other things like that to deal with it. If they forget, by the way, that the most common thing we found is that they forget to repeat the question back to us. We let them carry it out. Don't interrupt them in the middle of their sentence, because they're thinking as they're going, and we don't want to knock them off their kind of confidence perch. So when they finish, we say, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Can we do it again? Can you just repeat the question back to us at the beginning, and then just run through what you've got? Even if all we use is the beginning of that next take, it's gold. The final thing that we want to say is go for candid. So know what you want to get out, and this is where a storyboard is really important. Know what you want, but then go for candid. So don't ask them to repeat phrases. We sometimes get into a situation where we're asked to get specific phrases out of people, and look, there are sometimes reasons for that, but almost always a candid approach, getting people to speak and stumble over their words, is far more emotionally engaging than getting rehearsed lines back. So we were once in a shoot and we were up in Arnhem Land, and we were talking about isolation and whatnot, and I can't remember the question, but the answer that she gave us was, you know, here I am, and Google Earth doesn't even know where I am. It was something like that. And that colloquial phrase, that really candid response, and she laughed as she said it, that was just gold to us, because it's highly relatable. It's kind of that kind of conversation. Whereas had she said to us, yes, we are extremely isolated out here, and you know, that isolation can cause problems for us, that is much more stiff, whereas the Google Earth thing will stay in people's minds. It's an unexpected answer. Okay, now we might jump into bread and butter. So Brendan, do you want to kick us off on this? I'll put you on video.
Yep. Thanks. So yeah, we'll now be going through some sort of practical, technical side of things, which will just help you to tell your story with I guess letting the gear tell the story, the technical side of video production tell the story. And I'm going to give you, I guess, some simple tips that you can do to really boost your production value using gear that you already have, like your phone, and also a little bit of inexpensive gear as well. So we're going to start on audio. Thank you. So we're going to just go through some key principles, I suppose, of recording audio. So the reason we're starting with audio is because it's actually quite critical in giving you that professional feel to your video. If a video has bad audio, it just sort of screams, this is low production value, this is not interesting, and people will switch off. So that's why we're starting with audio, because we think it's really important. And I guess the general principle around audio is to try and get the microphone as close to your subject as possible. And so that's why you'll see in a lot of interview videos these lavalier microphones. They're called lav mics. And the reason we use these is because we can actually mount these directly on the interview subject. So if we're interviewing Rich here, we could clip this mic straight onto his shirt here. And you can see that's actually quite close. It's only about a hand away from his mouth. And so that's going to give us really clean audio, as opposed to, say, if you were just recording using your phone and you were back here to get a good shot. I mean, I'm actually off the frame at the moment, but you can see that that's a much further distance from where he's speaking from. And that's going to, so having the microphone here is going to help us eliminate all that background noise. It's going to help us eliminate reverb from the room as well. And it's just going to give us a nice clean audio track to work with. This microphone here that we're using is called the Rode SmartLav. We've got it down here at the bottom of the slide. It's the SmartLav. It's a small, inexpensive microphone. And the great thing about this microphone is that it actually works with your smartphone. So you can just plug it in and use the built-in audio recorder on your smartphone. So I've got an Android phone and I use this app called Audio Recorder, and it records great audio. You can record all day with this. And then in your post-production, you just bring in that audio clip and line it up with your video clip, and you're ready to go.
This Rode one is actually a really cool little tool for, we think it's around $60, can't remember. We have the gear, we have the wireless Sennheiser mics as well that we use, which are excellent, but I can't remember the price on them. It's in the $500-600, something like that. So the difference that you're actually getting a comparable bit of quality for a fraction of the cost.
That's right. So this will step your production value up significantly from just using the microphone on your phone. And that's why we're recommending it.
Great.
And so the next tip we want to give you around this is to monitor your audio if you can. So that means as you're recording, if you have someone to actually film the video for you, they can monitor the audio as well if your gear allows for that. That will mean that if there's any unexpected noises, or if someone hits the mic or something, you'll know while you're recording, and you can go back and record that again. And if you can't do that, so say you're recording straight into your phone with this microphone, you can't monitor the audio in that case. We definitely recommend recording a test clip first up, just to make sure that your microphone is placed in a good spot. It's not going to get rustling from clothes or anything like that.
Hair. Hair can often be a problem when it comes down and dangles on and it's not until after you listen to it, you're like, oh, that hair's rustling. And by that stage, it's far too late to do anything about it.
Exactly. And that leads us into the last point on the slides as well, which is to use a backup if you can. So your backup could be the microphone on your phone if you're recording with a phone, so that could be a backup source, or you could use an external recorder as well to get another audio source. So that just means that if someone does hit the mic while they're talking, you have another source of audio that you can chop in there. So yeah, you have a backup.
So Brendan just missed one point, which I'll quickly touch on because I think it's quite important, that when we talk about background noise, which is the bane of every videographer's existence, traffic, there might be someone in the kitchen or construction noise or whatever, where possible, avoid it. But if you can't, make sure you can see the noise on the camera. So, you know, basically face your interviewee where the background noise is behind them. So if it's a construction site, we want to see the construction site. That is an acceptable way for people to process the noise. Otherwise, it just sounds like it's a mess and we're not sure what's happened here.
Yeah. So our key here is to try and minimize distraction with the audio. So yeah, with that point, if you can't see the noise, you'll be constantly trying to figure out what that noise is as you're watching the video instead of focusing on the person who's speaking.
Cool.
Yeah, so I just thought we'd go through the gear as well. So we got the Smart Lav here, which is around $60, which plugs directly into your iPhone. If you're recording with a camera that has an external mic port, like this camera here, we have the A7 camera, which we'll go through cameras in a second. But that allows you to plug in a microphone to use. So an inexpensive microphone we're recommending for that is the Rode Video Mic Go or another Rode Video Mic. They're around $100, and that'll allow you can actually use an extension cable with those, and you can use that on an extension to get close to your subject as well. And more professional, higher end option is one of these Zoom recorders. So we have one of these here. It has 4 inputs, this one. And you can use that with a shotgun mic, which will, shotgun mics are these mics and they are directional. So where you point them is where they pick up sound from. And so these are useful for sort of isolating your sound source.
So a lot of time on our shoot, we will run a lapel mic. If we're doing an interview, we'll do a lapel mic and then we'll have a backup shotgun mic out of frame as well.
Just above the subject.
Yeah. So basically, there are 2 good sources if one fails.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
On to video.
All right.
Okay, so this first point is sort of around the idea behind your video. So it's just important to know before we start shooting whether you want your subject to be addressing the camera or if your subject should be looking off camera. So this is, so you would usually do an off-camera shot if you are interviewing someone. So that's,
So essentially the 2 camera, if I look at the camera right now, it's like I'm talking directly to you, and it's like so this is really good if you're doing a fundraising appeal or something like that, and you're appealing directly to the audience to say, hey, we need you on this one. If you're telling a story, or if multiple people are in the video telling a story, you go off the camera and you talk to someone there, and you can cut between, you know, we cut between different people there, and it feels like you're actually engaged in a live conversation. Like, So Brendan's right, you got to know that first before you start anything. Are we directly addressing the audience in this, or are we letting them peer in on a story? You really can't mix the 2 in a single video unless it's a particular call to action at the end that kind of breaks that 4th wall that says, okay, the video's over now, we need to talk to you about this. So that's
And so we're just going to look at a couple of tips around framing off-camera shots, and then I've got an example of a 2-camera shot at the end as well. So this is, we're going to look at the rule of thirds now. So this is a shot I just took earlier with our colleague Carla. And you can see here that there's lines on the screen, 2 horizontal lines and 2 vertical lines. And the rule here with the rule of thirds is to line up your subject with where one of those points intersects, where 2 of those lines intersect. So you can see that I've got her on the top right point where those lines intersect, and that gives us a nice frame, because your eyes are naturally drawn to those points in the shot. So we're just so by framing in this way, we're telling the person looking at the video that this person is important and that's where they should be looking. And so it helps to keep them engaged and interested.
Right.
The next point we're going to look at is eye lines. So I just took some extreme examples just to sort of show you what we're talking about here. So generally, when we're shooting an interview, we want to make sure that the camera is level with the person's eye line that you're interviewing. And so I've just given you some examples of extreme shots where we've broken that rule. So the first one is we're shooting down onto the subject, and the second one is we're shooting up. So you can sometimes use a slightly lower perspective, like on the right, but probably not to that extreme, to sort of give the speaker a sense of power and authority. And so that can be useful in some circumstances, but we recommend starting at sort of the level, being level with the eye line. That's a good place to start.
Interestingly, the one on the left, you often see used in, or you used to, not so much anymore, but when you're a lot of not-for-profits, especially when dealing with children's issues and the children is in there, will be looking up and the camera will be sitting above it, and it's to kind of give the viewer the feeling of responsibility over, essentially these eye lines are about power, the power dynamic. So if you sit above your interviewer, they look smaller and more vulnerable, and with less authority. And so when you're dealing with vulnerable people like children, you'd often see ads that would set that eye line like that, to say, hey, these people need your help. They're in your charge right now. That's kind of the message that is being sent.
And the last tip we have is around open framing. So this is just a point to keep in mind when you're interviewing someone, which side to keep open in the frame. So we have on the left side this wider side that's open next to Carla. And you'll notice that she's looking off to that side of the frame, which means that the interviewer is sitting to the left of the camera. So this is just something to keep in mind. It's a convention, and it's something that we're used to with video. So if Carla was looking off the other way to the side of the frame that was closed or that is smaller, it would just look unusual to us, and it's gonna make the viewer feel uncomfortable, uneasy. They'll feel like something is wrong about the video. They probably won't be able to put their finger quite on it. But this is just one of those things to keep in mind as you're shooting, to keep the interviewer on that side of the frame that's open.
And similarly, if you've got two people or more than one person, it's good to actually mix these up. So Carla right now is looking off to one side. If you were to do another interview that you would be mixing in the edit, put the person on the other side looking the other way. And again, it feels like a live conversation.
And now I just wanted to show an example of a 2-camera shot as well. So this is another shot of Carla, and I've got her framed in the middle with her eyes directly on that top line of the rule of thirds. So we're still using the rule of thirds for this shot, but just in a different way. So we also wanted to touch on a point of landscape or vertical. So this is another decision that you want to make before you start shooting. And this is to consider where your video will be published when it's finished. So there's a whole range of things to consider, I guess. But with Instagram video becoming quite popular, it's important to make that consideration, because that will affect how you actually orientate your camera when you're shooting the video. So if you're hoping to put this video onto an Instagram story or something like that, you want to shoot with your camera vertical. But for everything else, we sort of recommend shooting landscape because that's something that people are used to viewing.
And gives you lots of scope later on to change. You can change it to a square or whatever in the post.
That's right.
More easily. Landscape.
From landscape. That's right. So the next point is about keeping your shot stable. So we recommend if you're using a phone to shoot that you actually get sort of we don't have one here, but that you get a mount sort of will hold on to your phone. Just switch the video on, yeah. So sort of like a car mount, like if you were mounting your phone in a car, you can get a clip that will hold on to your phone like this, and that will actually attach to a tripod. You can screw it onto a tripod, and that'll keep your camera nice and stable while you're shooting, because that's what people are, I guess, are used to again with an interview. They're not used to, you know, a shot where the camera is moving, and yeah, sort of, when the camera is moving, it sort of sends a message again. So when the camera is moving, it sort of makes the viewer feel like, you know, there might be a lot of action in the shot. It sort of communicates action or a sense of uneasiness sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, so we're just trying to control, I guess, what these different aspects of the technical production are saying about our story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And the last point is to just run your checks. So before you start with your interview, you just want to make sure that obviously you're recording on your camera, you're recording on your audio recorder, or your iPhone with the Smart Lav. And so what I do actually before we start, I just say rolling on camera, rolling on audio, and I do those checks just to make sure that everything's set before we go, because there's nothing worse than getting to the end of an interview and realizing that your audio was recording.
Yeah, and we often will say to each other, check the eye line, you know, check the format. You know, we'll often be running verbally out loud, running these checks to each other. And it may sound dumb, but it's actually saved our bacon many a time.
That's right.
So it's really important because we're trying to deal with so much in that moment. And you'll know this when you're trying to think about the story and capture the story, it's actually quite hard to think about the technical side as well. So whatever you can do to alleviate that, even a actual physical checklist is good.
Okay, so a gear to consider for video is an iPhone, or I've got an Android phone, as I said before. It shoots video as well, and a phone mount that you can put on a tripod. So that'll keep it nice and stable. If you want to sort of go the next level up with video, you can get a compact digital camera. So we recommend something like a Sony RX100.
Yeah, you know, for only a couple of $100, they're actually a really great. They're a really excellent camera. So you should check those out. They're not very good at distance, but they're extremely good at up close people stuff.
Yeah, and some of the later models as well have cool features like slow motion video and that kind of thing. So you can get a little bit creative with something like that.
Yeah.
And sort of the next level up would be a mirrorless camera with a prime lens. So I've got there the A6000 series from Sony. But this is sort of a similar camera. This is the A7 S2, which is something that we actually shoot on. And so these cameras have a body and a lens, and we recommend using a prime lens with these, such as a 50mm. And the great thing about these cameras, I suppose, is you get ports that you can plug in an external microphone to, and you can plug in headphones as well, so you can monitor the audio while you're recording. And yeah, these cameras give that extra level of image quality. But you know, we recommend, you know, if that's something that's, I suppose, too expensive, there's nothing wrong with using your iPhone.
Yeah, that's right. Don't let it get in the way of making video. Yeah. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, so the last point we're going to look at this technical production side of things is lighting. And so lighting is sort of all about, I guess, creating a depth to your shot. And obviously, I suppose video relies on light to be able to see what you're shooting. So we have lights here. We don't really have any fancy lighting set up at the moment. We've just got our office lights lighting us at the moment. Yeah, but we're just going to look at a couple of lighting techniques.
Yeah.
And so I've got a light here. It's an inexpensive light that we actually got from eBay. So this is sort of a backup light that we use, but it's very capable for this sort of thing. And I've got some baking paper on the front, and this is just to sort of
soften the light,
soften the light, diffuse the light, and make it nice and soft on Rich's face. So I'm just going to turn it on now, and we'll see what it does. So as I mentioned before, we're trying to create sort of a sense of depth on the subject's face, and we can do that by moving the light to the side. And as you can see, as I come around the side of Rich's face, we start to see more shadows, and we can sort of see more depth on his face. And so for a normal sort of interview setup, we'd recommend placing the light sort of off to the side, sort of at a 45-degree angle to your subject's face. And that'll give you a nice balance between this sort of moody, mysterious shot, and a front-on lighting, which we don't recommend, which sort of flattens all the features of your subject's face, and just doesn't look very engaging. So this is sort of lighting that we recommend. And so how to achieve that? We actually recommend using natural light in a lot of cases if you don't have access to lighting. So this could be a window, or if you're shooting outside, you just want to think about where the light is coming from. And if you are using lighting, this is a great light to use. We got this one from eBay. I think it's called a YN300. And making sure that you use something to diffuse that light to make it a bit softer.
The other thing you can do that's really cheap, you can buy reflectors off eBay, and they usually unzip, and they've got like diffusers on there, they've got reflectors on there. What are they, $30 or something
Less
like
than
that?
30, yeah. So they're a great way to use natural light outside. You can reflect that onto someone's face. Again, using that 45-degree angle is a great way to get a good look in your lighting. And we also have down on the gear an IKEA lamp. I think I've got a photo of one that we would recommend if you're looking for a really inexpensive way to get artificial light, to use artificial light in your shots. So you can see this lamp has a nice paper cover over the top, and that'll give you that nice diffused look again. So if you put a nice quality bulb in there, that'll give you a nice good light as well.
Excellent. So there's a very fast whirlwind of production on a budget. Sorry, let me switch this again. Like I said, gear is one of these things that you could continually invest in more and more and more. Even for us though, we've found, like, we've got some really nice gear here, but if we're going out and shooting a commercial, we don't need the gear for that here. You can hire that stuff in really easily. So if you say, you know what, actually there's something really cool going on and I want to get a really nice camera to do it, you can actually hire gear relatively inexpensively for a day. And there are a lot of gear places that if you tell them you're a not-for-profit, that they'll do a discount for you as well. So look, the last thing that we'd like to say before we finish off, sorry to keep doing this, is just some last considerations here. So in terms of editing software, obviously all Macs and PCs come in with a native editing software. These are actually fine. They're good. iMovie is a bit restrictive sometimes, and
same with the Windows version. So it's a basic editing experience, but it's something that's easy and simple to get started with. And if you're just cutting together a couple of different clips of an interview, it's actually a great way to do that because it's quite easy, and it's free as well. It comes with your operating system.
Yeah.
So it's a great way to get started.
But the kind of next level up, I think, would be well, what we use is Adobe Premiere Pro, and we like it because it obviously the sky's the limit with what you can do on it, but also it interacts really nicely with the other Adobe programs, with Photoshop and with After Effects. So if you do want to get fancy with it, if you have the Adobe suite, and again, I'll make a plug to Connecting Up because I believe they do a pretty good discount on the Adobe suite, I think. And that's a fantastic tool for not-for-profits. The last two things to say is really do consider your distribution before you shoot. So think through your strategy a little bit for what am I going to do with this video? So that's almost the first question before you even start your storyboarding. Is it for social media? Is it am I going to run ads with this thing? Because it will actually, the outflow of that will it will dictate everything else. What gear you use, how you frame it, how you shoot it, whether it's to camera, whether it's off camera, all that sort of stuff. So spend some time thinking about your strategy before you actually go into shot mode. Of course, that's not always practical. Sometimes you've just got to capture the moment where you are. So do your best. And embrace the low production value when it comes along. You know, that raw feel that comes with low production value is sometimes such a breath of fresh air for people. Like overproduced stuff can get people can get a bit over sometimes. So don't feel like it's in some way inferior because you have low production value on it. And the last thing to say is, look, consistency is absolutely critical. There's very little value in just doing a video a year or something like that. So consider video as part of your comms strategy overall. It's an extremely powerful tool, and make it a consistent tool. That'll also make you faster at your editing and at your filming and all that. Just practice obviously makes perfect, and yeah. And that's an important thing to do. So, look, that's it for us. We would be delighted to receive any questions or chat further if you'd like. Tina, do we have time for questions now?
Yes, we do. We do have a few questions that have come through. So the first one is, when interviewing, is it better to have the interviewer in the video as well, or as a voiceover?
So that's an excellent question, and again, it depends on the situation. So two things. If you wanted the personality of the interviewer to be part of the video, so for instance, it might be the CEO of your organization talking about a partnership that they've got with the person that's being interviewed at the moment. And so in that situation, there's two personalities that you want to get. So then in that case, you do want both people there, because the story is actually dependent on both of them. But if, however, you're wanting just to capture and focus in on that story, definitely get the interviewer off camera and let them be a silent person in this. So we don't even mic up when we're doing interviews, because we want the person to be the sole storyteller there. That's why we ask them to say the question back, so that it's not dependent on the interviewer.
Yep.
Okay. The next one is, have you got any advice on incorporating other things like music into a video?
Yes, very much so. We could talk about this all day. Look, Brendan will disagree with me on this, so I'll just say it and then watch him get annoyed. But I think actually music should be one of your first steps in editing. Maybe you don't disagree with that. Yeah. I believe music, and I've got a background in music, maybe this is why, but I believe music conveys almost, well, it's about 50% of the emotion comes from your music, I reckon. No stats to back that up, except mine. So I hunt for that piece, because that will dictate the tone of your video in a massive, massive way. A happy bit of music, no matter what the person's saying, will automatically make the video feel happy. And similarly, no matter how joyful a person is, if the music is sad, you'll feel like there's some tragedy going on behind their joy, so something they don't know about. So that music is, in my view, absolutely paramount. So on the high-end movies, obviously people edit, and then a score writer will come in and write to the tone and to the arc that's happening in the scene. We don't obviously have that luxury. So I believe flipping that around, picking your tone and your feel and then editing to it, so your breaks when the music's are breaking and all that sort of stuff, carries a really powerful story. That being said, you don't need to do it like that. You know, you can put music in sort of halfway through the edit. In terms of where you get your music from, there's some great places. So I'll just mention those. If you've got a little bit more budget, go to a place called Music Bed, because the music there is really excellent, and they give a 50% discount for not-for-profits. And we like that because it's real music. It's like actual orchestras or bands or whatnot, and very expressive. If you're on a super low budget, Audio Jungle is terrific. You can get a piece for $40 or something like that.
Yep.
And if you hunt long enough, you can actually find some real gems there.
Definitely.
Then there are some other excellent places. Premium Beat is a good one. There's actually new ones just popping up all the time. But yes, music, it's a great question, because music is absolutely paramount in your edit. Anything to add to that?
So I agree with mostly with what Rich said. I think the reason why I would say it's not necessary to pick your audio or your music before editing is because I think I like to edit a certain emotion into the video as I'm editing, and then let the music add to that on top of that emotion and sort of feeling and the story. So I think the music can come in at any point in the process.
Wow.
But I think what I like to see, you know, sort of something coming through in the edit, and then to add that music on top of that really elevates that. And so
and then obviously you're not just slapping on a piece of music, you're then recutting to that piece of music anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's really important. Often we see it as the last consideration. People are like, oh great, I got this video, I've finished it, pop this piece, and usually it's a piece that they haven't got a license for, so it's a piece of pop music, which you can't do, by the way, and then they just kind of put a fade on the end of it and push it out, and there's no sort of consideration with how the edit and the piece of music interact, and that is actually a really important step.
Okay, the next question is, if you are videoing multiple people in the one frame, would you encourage them to speak to the camera or speak to each other?
Yeah, I guess that comes down to sort of what the style of the video is. So yeah, I guess they're addressing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, what is it? By the way, that's one of the hardest types of shots to do. So only do it if you absolutely have to. This can be done in a few different ways. One is put them around a table or put them on some couches and have them chat to each other. That's quite an engaging way to do it. I probably wouldn't have them speak all to camera. That would be a really rare situation. Where you would have everyone speak to camera. It would feel very disjointed.
I think to sort of set up a scene is probably the best way to deal with that sort of situation. So using a couch is a great scene to sort of construct to tell a story that way, or around a table.
We've found the dining table to be amazing for that kind of thing, because we're used to conversations happening on dining tables, and that's usually where, you know, in your home or around your lunch table at work, that's where the good conversations happen. So we've often set that up as the scene.
I guess a good practical tip around this is to think about I guess how close the people in the shots are sitting. Sometimes on video, in real life, you normally don't sit super close to people. There's sort of a bubble that you sit in, and it feels weird if people are sitting within that bubble. At the moment, actually, I think me and Rich are probably in each other's bubbles a little bit.
Yep, I'm feeling it.
And you probably didn't notice until I pointed it out now, but actually it looks better on video to have your subject sitting closer if there's multiple people on the camera. It makes the shot feel just a little bit more cohesive than if we were sitting at a natural distance. It sort of feels a little bit weird and spaced out. So that's a practical tip around that. So if you're sitting around a table, maybe pick a corner of the table to have everyone sort of clumped together and sitting in, or on a couch is a great way to get people to sit closer to each other than they would normally do.
Okay. Similarly, someone else has asked, what about when you're doing a webinar? Where would you look?
Oh, definitely at the camera.
Yeah.
Although we haven't been doing it because we've been looking at our presentation. But a webinar is all about, so your audience is watching you. So, and you are speaking to an audience. So in that situation, you want to be speaking to them like this. Only it's hard because I'm looking at a tiny black dot at the top of my computer as opposed to my presentation, which I'm looking at now. But the engagement of me looking up will be better than me looking down. So yeah, in an ideal world, yep, look at your camera, but it is hard. Yeah.
Okay, the next one is, I want to create a fundraising video. I want to incorporate interview, other images, and music. Will Windows be a good enough editing tool for this?
Yes, it'll be fine. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a Mac person. What are the limitations of?
I haven't used the Windows Movie Maker much. I used the old version called Windows Movie Maker. I'm not sure what it's called now. I think you type in, I just checked before, you type in video into the start menu and it'll come up. And I know you can place in clips and you can place in an audio track underneath. Yeah. So if you're cutting between, those interviews, you can then cut to some photos, your other media that you want to include in that video. So it is definitely possible to make it with that kind of tool.
This is not your question, but I'll give you a sub answer to it as well. So fundraising videos, we do tons of fundraising videos. Make sure unless your audience is captive, like at an event, make sure your ask is up front. Make sure you actually state what's going on pretty quickly. There's a misconception, I think, that we need to fully build a story before we put an ask in. But the problem is if you're running that on social media, people are long gone by the time you've gotten to your actual point of what you're trying to say. So again, unless your audience is captive, make sure your fundraising video pretty quickly states what you need from the person watching the video.
Okay, and it's called Video Editor. I just quickly checked for you because I use Windows. Okay, so that's all for questions today. Was there anything that either of you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, feel free to shoot any other questions through if you've got them. But yeah, and we've covered an enormous amount of ground here. Please, our biggest hope is that doesn't feel intimidating for you. We've hoped to try and do the opposite for you. Just take it one step at a time and kind of be prepared to make mistakes as you go. I think that's really important. Yeah.
Great. Thanks very much, Rich and Brendan, for presenting today, and thank you everyone for joining us. We've had a few people send through messages saying thank you so much. This is a great webinar and it was really awesome. So thanks, guys. I hope everyone has learnt a lot from this presentation and that all of your questions have been answered. If you do have any questions that come to mind later on or any feedback about the webinar, please send that through to events@connectingup.org and we will answer those questions offline. You can also contact Rich and Brendan directly via the information on your screen. Don't forget that the recording will be available on our website very shortly and a link will be sent to you, so keep an eye out on your inbox again. Thank you for being with us, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and we look forward to seeing you all next time. Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Bye.